I have some questions for today's Q&A to answer. For those of you that are new to the group, you maybe won't know, but I do a 15-minute Q&A segment every week on a Friday at 1:00. Now, I'm running late today because summer holidays have, summer holidays have just basically caught up with me a little bit, so I am running a little bit late today. But yes, during that 15-minute segment, I answer as many questions as I can, or point you in the direction of resources that I've got in order to be able to support you in your Border Collies. So I'm hoping that we can get through some good questions today. Bear with me just a second. I feel like I'm on a bit of a wonk and it's making me a bit dizzy. There we go. Okay, less of a wonk there. That's good. Right, let me just see if I can find my questions. Of course, when I'm in a bit of a rush, technology is taking a bit longer. But I can see we've got Amanda here. Hi, Amanda. She's watching. It looks like a few more people are joining in, which is good. And as I say, guys, if you can just let me know that tech is working all right, just by putting a thumbs up across the screen, that would be super helpful. Just like I say, to make sure that I'm not talking to myself. Right, I'm going to set the timer running. It looks like everything is working now in techie land. Let me just check that. I just got it up on my computer to make sure that the volume is working okay. So let's just see. Yeah, that sounds like it's working. Good stuff. All right, should we go on into questions then? Let's go into questions. Alexa, can you set a timer for 15 minutes, please?
Good afternoon, Gemma. 15 minutes, starting now.
All right, here we go. So, first question is from Scott, and he says, "Hi, my Border Collie Floss is a generally well-behaved and happy dog. When she's excited, e.g. seeing a squirrel up a tree, she barks. She also barks when the doorbell rings, or if she hears the front gate squeak as it opens. She rushes to the door, tail wagging, and continues to bark. This has never been a bother to us. However, in November, we are moving to the Isle of Skye to a bed and breakfast business we have bought. We open our doors to guests next April, and I want to use the time between November and opening to help Floss become less barky. The last thing I'd want to happen would be a TripAdvisor review saying, 'Lovely B&B, shame about the barky collie.' I'd be grateful for any help you can offer." So barking was a big topic last month in Collie Culture Land, and we talked quite a bit about various bits and pieces as to why dogs bark. Now, in this instance, it's a bit difficult to tell just from your description whether or not she's barking because she's at all territorial in terms of, oh my gosh, someone's here. So one of my dogs is very like that if she sees a perceived threat to the family, then she's, on high alert. And then I've got other dogs who, when, the doorbell goes, they're just genuinely excited. They kind of have quite an optimistic view of the world, that whoever is arriving must be for them and is probably bringing something nice. So it sort of depends a little bit on which end of the scale her emotional, feelings are coming from. So I'm just going to briefly kind of cover both ends of the spectrum. If it's because she is slightly concerned in terms of, like I've heard something and I think we all need to pay attention because who knows what it could be. Maybe it's somebody, it's a burglar knocking at the door. I never know how their brains work because I'm like, burglars don't knock at doors, do they? But anyhow, but let's say that's her end of the spectrum and she's kind of concerned about it. So what I would be aiming to do is to try and change her emotional response from that kind of slightly negative, what is going to happen, to, oh my God, I heard that noise, and something positive is going to happen instead. Now, that's something positive happening. Border Collies are very good at doing dot-to-dot puzzles, as I like to say. So the dot-to-dot she's currently doing is, I hear the gate, I hear the doorbell go, I hear, some noise that indicates someone is coming in, and that causes that emotional response that then sets off the barking. All right. So if I can take those dots and I can say, okay, every time somebody opens the door, there's a treat shower. Every time somebody opens that side gate, you get presented with a chunk of cheese. Basically, we change that emotional response to, oh my gosh, what's going to happen, to, oh, what is going to happen? We change it kind of to more of a positive. So that would be the first thing. The second thing I would think about also is that dogs that are worried that we don't notice stuff are normally not wrong, because us human beings, as far as Border Collies are concerned, often think, my God, Humans are so stupid. They don't notice stuff. So noticing stuff more sounds a silly thing to maybe be doing, but acknowledging that, oh, I heard the door. Thank you. Good dog. Can be really helpful, because actually some of the reason that they bark and they continue to bark is because they don't feel like their initial warning, which they perceive to be very valuable, has not been heeded. And then that can cause them to be worried and then continue that barking. And like I say, I would think less of the barking as a behaviour, and I would worry more about what the emotional reason for the barking is, because if you can change the emotional response, you have a much better chance of changing. So here's how I look at it. I don't mind my dog barking when, to alert me to somebody's coming to the door. What I do care about is they're going to do that continuous barking. Some of my dogs bark when the doorbell goes. Some of them don't. Like, some of them are just so genuinely not worried about stuff. And I say not worried about stuff. They don't have the need to protect and serve that some of the others do. So from that perspective, the barking doesn't really occur to them. And like I say, it's all about emotional responses. Now, if we have a dog, on the other hand, that gets super excited when they see other people, and they get very excited when visitors arrive at your home. I've got a blog post on this on my website, which I highly encourage you to go and have a look at, because essentially it changes. We're looking at a couple of things with dogs that are very excited about people. One is, you can be excited about people, but there have to be some permissions in place, particularly as a B&B owner. You might get somebody staying that is not particularly fond of dogs, and just because our dog likes saying hi to people doesn't necessarily mean that that's going to be appropriate for every person. So putting some permissions in place, what we call our meet and greet protocol that we learned from Suzanne Clothier in the States, that's really useful. So we get started with that. I also work on teaching a really good settle. So a dog that is like, oh, I heard the doorbell go, but is generally quite settled. It's much easier to get them to settle down after they've had a woof than if they are a dog that is kind of, oh my gosh, listening out for things. Management things in the short term and potentially longer term as well are things like having background noise going. So if it's something like the tiniest click of a gate that causes it, having some background noise like white noise, some classical music playing in the background, that kind of thing, it can make it much harder for a Border Collie to pick out that one sound, which means that thing that causes them to start barking. So those are some things that I would try. But go and have a look on my website, gemmafisher.com. And I think it's something called, if you're serious about, your dog's reaction to visitors, go and check that blog post out. But it explains in a bit more detail some of the stuff that we've talked about today. Okay. Right. Susie has a good question. All right. Susie's question is, how do I train my 4-month-old not to attack the vacuum, yard brush, floor mop, rake, etc.? He goes wild as soon as I start the action of sweeping or raking and bites the tools, really frantic. Will not take a firm no, and I have to stop. I have to crate him to vacuum, but want him in the garden with me. Help appreciated. Thanks. So he's 4 months old. He's a real baby. Okay. So when we are very young, and indeed sometimes when we get very old, our sense of being able to control ourselves is very limited. All right. So if you think he is at kind of the toddler stage of the spectrum, even training that you might have done with him so far, it won't be deeply ingrained at this point because of the fact that he's so young. And that self-control muscle, as I think of it, is not very developed. So to ask him to be able to control himself in the face of something that either he finds very exciting or maybe a little bit worrisome, he's like, the sound of it hurts my ears. Baby dogs particularly often are a bit more sound sensitive because of the fact that their jaw is sore from all the teething that's going on. And the trouble with jaw pain is that it can give you a bit of a headache. You think migraine, you think sound, light sensitivity, all of that good stuff. So the short-term plan is management, all right? Because every time a dog practices something, they are getting better at it. So wherever we can avoid that happening, all the better. Okay, so management in the first instance. So that might look like I'm going to pop you out of the room. I'm going to go and pop you in the back of the car with a chew so that you're getting some practice of being in the car. Anywhere where they're not going to be seeing it so that you can go ahead and do your jobs without having to worry about your little helper. Then the next thing that I would be working on, and I would work on this away from using these tools at the moment, but I would be working on that settle that I've just talked about before. Again, if you go to the gemmafisher.com website, you'll see some resources. If you type in the search function, if you type in settle, it will bring you up some resources about how to do that. But essentially, a dog that is able to settle on a bed or on a mat is a dog that then we can potentially do things like, I can have you out in the garden and I can ask you to go and settle on that mat whilst I'm doing some work in the garden, because it's nice to have our dogs out in the garden. I get that. But as I say, 4 months old, so 16 weeks, still really young to be able to do duration behaviours and to be able to have that sort of self-control needed to be able to cope with, very exciting or stimulating things. So when I find something that my dog says, that one's really exciting or triggering something, is a lot for me, then I will see, okay, what's the smallest version of this that I can do? So like I say, I would work on my settle training. I'd get to the point where if I dropped a treat over here, my dog would be like, oh no, nailed it, got it. I know I'm not supposed to leave my bed in order to go and get that treat. At that point, I might go, okay, I'm going to pick up the brush. All right. If you can stay on the bed, we're going to do lots of rewarding. Then I might do like a teeny tiny brush. Good dog, super. 10, 15 treats for staying on the bed. And I would build it up that way. Because of the overall goal to have him out and about and to be able to enjoy his company whilst you're out in the garden, it's worth taking the time to break it down into those smaller steps. And what you may well find is that as he starts to get older and you're working on other things at the same time, that actually you can go through those steps quite quickly. But better to break it down into those smaller pieces because it will be much more effective. Think trying to build a house whilst having put it on dodgy foundations. Your roof is not going to stay on if the foundations are not good, are they? I say this, I'm not a builder, I don't know, but that's what I come to understand anyway. Okay, so I hope that's helpful. Right, Yvonne has a question. She said, my 17-month-old Border Collie barks and lunges on the lead at strangers. I've been doing lots of watch command training indoors. I use a flirt pole and hire a field where he herds balls. We also do hoopers training. He also refuses to go near a busy road and just pancakes to the floor. I'm gradually trying to build up his confidence with lots of positive reinforcement. Can you give me any advice, please? I don't go to a hired field. I drive to fields where I keep him on a long lead and a distance away from people. He is fine with dogs. Thank you. Okay, so first and foremost, one of the things that Border Collies get taught a lot is this watch cue, which for those of you that might be new to it, it's the idea that we teach our dogs to look at us, okay? I'm not such a big fan of that, only that if I was worried about something or if I was a bit frightened about something and you told me to stare at you rather than keep track of whatever it was that was worrying me, that thing that worries me might suddenly then appear in my eye line and I might be like, I wasn't expecting it and now it's made me panic and it's frightened me. So this is something that I would think about with teaching this watch cue. As I say, I'm not a big fan. What I tend to prefer is the dog's ability to be able to respond to their name quickly. So we have a game that we call the name response game. And just by virtue of the way that I guess I live my life with my dogs, they check in with me. There's auto check-ins, as we call them, where the dog will go, I'm wandering along, I see something, hey mum, what should I do about it? There'll be those check-ins. And reinforcement of those, really, really valuable. Now, in terms of the traffic particularly, if you have a look in the featured section here in the Facebook group, you will find that I've got some resources about helping with car chasing collies. Now, it doesn't sound like he's chasing, it sounds more like he's like, oh, please, I don't want to go anywhere near. But it will give you some ideas of how to help with that car chasing. So go and take a look at the featured section and that will give you some ideas there. But in terms of the people, one of the things that potentially has happened when he was a younger dog is that he's maybe had some experiences which he wasn't particularly keen on. And now he's a little bit older, he feels like he can say, no, I don't like that. That's not okay by me. So what we really want to do is we want to build up his confidence around people. And so one of the things that I would look to do is come up with a list of stooge people. And I would use a technique that I learned from Suzanne Clothier. This is a very short version of a very wonderful technique. So this is not the full. I would suggest going and having a look on Suzanne's website for this. But is the treat and retreat game. Okay, and it's it's not really a game as such. It's actually more of a protocol that when my dogs meet someone, rather than they have to come and take a treat from their hand, what I will ask them to do instead, ask that person they're greeting to do instead, is I will ask them to take that treat and throw it slightly to the side and behind them. Okay, so what happens is my dog is looking at this person, they throw a treat, and my dog gets two things. It gets the reward, but it also gets the opportunity to turn away. So if my dog is at all worried, I'm not trying to force them to go closer to the thing that they're worried about. What I'm saying is you can have the nice thing that you want, the treat that that person has, but also you can turn away from that person. Because dogs that bark and lunge and go forward at things often are doing so because they are trying to create distance. It's what we call a distance-inducing kind of signal. And it's normally quite effective, isn't it? Because if our dogs bark and lunge, what we tend to do is we tend to go, okay, let's turn around and go back this way. Or the other person moves away because, you know, they don't like being barked and spat at by our dog. So it's useful. It works for them. So what we want to do instead is we want to change that up and say, do you know what? You can be around a person, but if you're feeling uncomfortable, one of the things that you can do is you can turn away from that person as opposed to feeling like you have to be close to them. Because from my perspective, I don't need my dog to be best buddies with every person that they meet. I mean, my dogs are very social and would probably happily do that, but they don't have to. It's not an essential requirement of being a dog. Just in the same way that I don't expect my children to be friends with every person they meet. It's going to be like, you know, we're selective, aren't we? We're social species, but there are going to be people we like and people we don't like, and that's okay. But what is not potentially okay is how we deal with those people that we don't like. So we need to come up with a strategy for him that he can go, okay, I don't feel comfortable in this situation, but I can move away from it rather than having to do these sort of distance-inducing signals. This also requires us to do something as well. So to advocate on our dog's behalf. So my stepdaughter's little young dog is going through a little bit of a fear phase where sometimes when people come over, she is not sure about them. She said, I don't know you. I'm not sure if you're a safe person. So if they go to touch her or if they go to say hello because they're friendly people, I go, please don't do that. You know, she's not very sure. She's a bit young, and I prevent that happening. So what happens is she is saved the you know, uncomfortable feeling of somebody she doesn't know touching her or, you know, entering her space, and she's not rehearsing that behaviour of maybe barking or lunging or potentially snapping at them, which obviously we don't want it to escalate to. And like I say, then we can do this kind of treat or retreat thing where we say, okay, this person is here. How about they do some treat throwing away from you, and you don't have to interact. And then what happens is it becomes a lovely pattern that the dog goes, oh, I remember that. I like this pattern. This pattern makes me feel good. So then you can use it for other people. And, you know, it builds up to the point where you have a dog that is like, actually, these people around, you know, these strange people, they're not as bad as I thought they were, which is a really good place to be. Right, guys, that is Alexa telling me that it is 15 minutes and my time is up. And I do have to go, I'm afraid, guys, because I have a call with someone that I've got to go and help. Alexa, stop. So I'm going to love you and leave you. Have a great weekend with your dogs, whatever you're doing. And I will look forward to catching up with you next week. It's my final Q&A next week before I'm away for a couple of weeks. So these questions that were gathered up here, for those of you that are club students, I will make sure to move those questions into our next club student session. For those of you that are not, I will make sure that those go to the top of my list next week. All right. Anyway, have a great weekend. I'll catch you soon. Bye-bye.